A young woman sat quietly at the medical check-in desk. No one paid attention. A group of wounded Special Forces soldiers poured in after an ambush explosion, blood soaking the floor. A soldier about to lose consciousness gripped her hand, trembling, eyes watering. "Angel 9, is it real?" Everyone was confused. A doctor asked loudly, "Who is Angel 9? The soldier pointed to the girl taking notes. "That's her. She saved me from the death zone." "She's not check-in staff." Meet Mira Leon, 29 years old, long black hair tied low, small frame, eyes sharp like someone who always noticed everything but never said a word. She was a temporary employee at the medical reception desk of Fort Bennett, a military medical outpost near the Southern Combat Zone. Her name tag read, "Medical Admin, Tier 3, Temporary Duty." Nobody cared. Mira's job was recording information for soldiers, coming for checkups, marking preliminary symptoms, scheduling appointments. Young soldiers often joked, "Checking girl at desk number 4? Inches. Paper angel." Note-taking girl looks at everything so seriously. Once Mira asked the doctor to recheck a small bruise. The result was discovering hidden internal organ trauma. A medic snapped, "You only do administration. Don't pretend to be a doctor." Mira didn't react, just bowed her head and returned to work. She didn't eat lunch with anyone, left by the back exit. Didn't leave contact information. But someone noticed. Senior medic Carla, 20 years of frontline service. Carla recognized Mira's patient organization was never wrong. She would make light emergency cases wait, prioritizing those at risk of complications. Even before anyone else realized it, Carla whispered, "She didn't learn from textbooks. She's been on the front lines. I've seen those eyes before, of someone who held a dying soldier in their arms." The daily routine at Fort Bennett's medical facility was predictable, but Mira brought an unusual precision to what should have been routine administrative work. While other staff processed patients mechanically, she seemed to assess each person who approached her desk with an intensity that went beyond standard intake procedures. "Why does she stare at everyone like that?" complained Private Torres after his routine checkup appointment. "Maybe she's just thorough," suggested his buddy. "Better than the guy who was here before. He barely looked up from his paperwork." What they didn't understand was that Mira's staring was actually rapid medical assessment. In the few seconds it took each soldier to approach her desk, she was evaluating gait, skin color, breathing patterns, and subtle signs that might indicate problems requiring immediate attention. Her desk was organized with military precision, but also with the efficiency of someone who understood that seconds could mean the difference between life and death. Forms were arranged for maximum processing speed, and she had memorized the locations of every medical department, every doctor's schedule, every piece of equipment in the facility. "She works like she's expecting a mass casualty event," observed Dr. Martinez during a staff meeting. "It's almost unsettling." "She's just conscientious," defended Nurse Patterson, "and her preliminary assessments are remarkably accurate." During quiet periods, Mira would study medical journals that she brought from home, updating her knowledge of trauma care, emergency procedures, and battlefield medicine. When asked about her interest in advanced medical topics, she would deflect with simple answers about wanting to do my job better. But senior medic Carla noticed things that others missed. The way Mira's hands moved when she thought no one was watching, practicing suture techniques on pieces of cloth, testing tourniquets for proper tightness, mentally calculating medication dosages based on patient weights she estimated at a glance. "You've done this before, haven't you?" Carla asked during one of their brief interactions. Mira looked up from her paperwork, her expression carefully neutral. "Done what? Medical work?" "Real medical work, not just administration." For a moment, something flickered in Mira's eyes. Recognition, perhaps? Or caution? Then the professional mask returned. I just pay attention to details. But Carla had been in military medicine long enough to recognize the signs. Mira Leon was carrying knowledge that went far beyond administrative training, and the weight of whatever experience had taught her that knowledge. That knowledge was visible to anyone with the experience to see it. A security guard recalled. She would watch the ambulances arrive before anyone else heard them coming. When I asked how she knew, she said you learn to listen for the sounds that matter. That's not something you learn at a desk job. A massive explosion occurred at Supply Station Bravo 7. Supply convoy hit a mine. Fire erupted in the middle of the forest road. Over 20 casualties. 8 were Tier 1 Special Forces. All medical facilities were overloaded. Fort Bennett was designated for emergency intake. Mira was working at the check-in desk when she was called to assist with casualty coordination. She quickly triaged red, yellow, green by order of urgency. A soldier who seemed to have only soft tissue trauma, Mira glanced and requested he be moved to priority treatment. But doctor protested, "You don't have authority to designate." Mira calmly said, "His left eye is twitching, irregular pulse. He's bleeding internally from his liver." The examination confirmed she was completely correct. Another wounded Special Forces soldier, when placed on a stretcher, began whispering, "Angel 9, those eyes, last time, in the death zone." The entire emergency room froze. What? Angel 9? It was a military legend. During a failed operation in buffer zone D13, the response team was left behind. No one survived, except 11 soldiers brought out by an unnamed medic. No radio, no maps, no artillery support. She led them 6 kilometers through enemy territory, treating each person. Not one died. Nobody knew her real name. She was only heard on radio as Angel 9. Official reports denied the incident. No witnesses were made public. But the soldier on the stretcher had just said clearly, "That's her. She's here. The person sitting at check-in. She is Angel 9. Ice." The chaos that followed the Bravo 7 explosion was unlike anything Fort Bennett had experienced. Casualties arrived in waves, some by helicopter, others in ground vehicles that had fought their way through hostile territory to reach the medical facility. Mira had moved from her check-in desk to the main triage area, where her administrative role should have limited her to paperwork and coordination. Instead, she was making medical decisions with an authority that none of her colleagues had ever seen from her. That one, first. She pointed to a soldier who seemed to be conscious and walking. Internal bleeding, maybe 20 minutes before he collapses. Dr. Harrison started to object, then noticed the patient's pale complexion and subtle signs of shock that he had missed in the chaos. 20 minutes later, emergency surgery confirmed significant internal hemorrhaging. "How did you know?" he asked Mira during a brief lull. "Experience," she replied, already moving to assess the next group of casualties. But it was more than experience. It was expertise that came from somewhere official records didn't show. Mira was making diagnostic decisions that typically required years of emergency medicine training, and she was making them with confidence that suggested she had faced these situations many times before. The wounded Tier 1 operator who had mentioned Angel 9 was named Staff Sergeant Rodriguez. As medical staff worked to stabilize him, he continued talking, his words becoming clearer as pain medication took effect. "D13 was a nightmare," he murmured to anyone who would listen. "Ambush went wrong, extraction failed. We were pinned down for 18 hours. Command wrote us off, said the area was too hot for recovery." Senior medic Carla positioned herself to hear Rodriguez's account while she worked on his wounds. "But someone came," Rodriguez continued. "Small woman, maybe medic training, but she moved like she knew exactly where every enemy position was. She got us out one by one, treated wounds under fire, never lost her calm." "What did she look like?" Carla asked quietly. couldn't see much in the dark, but her voice, calm, confident, and her hands, steady as a surgeon's, even with bullets flying. She said her call sign was Angel 9, but we never saw her face clearly. Rodriguez turned his head toward the triage area, where Mira was working. But those eyes? I'd recognize them anywhere. That's her. That's Angel 9. Carla began investigating immediately. Military medical records were notoriously complex, but she had access to personnel databases that revealed information others couldn't see. What she found was disturbing. Mira Leon had, indeed, served with Rapid Combat Medic Unit 9, had participated in Operation D13, and had subsequently disappeared from official records. The last entry in her file was stark. Presumed Kia. Missing, presumed killed in action. A technical specialist managed to access drone footage from the D13 operation, enhancing nighttime thermal images that had been archived but never closely examined. The enhanced imagery showed a small figure moving through hostile territory, carrying wounded soldiers one by one to safety. The figure's size, movement patterns, and medical procedures matched Mira exactly. When Carla confronted Mira with this evidence, her response was characteristic. No denial, no explanation, just quiet acceptance. If they're alive, that's enough. I don't need anyone to know who I am. But the word was spreading throughout Fort Bennet. Soldiers who had dismissed the check-in girl were beginning to understand that they had been in the presence of a legend, someone whose actions had saved lives in ways that official recognition could never acknowledge. Mira remained silent. A combat engineer who had served in the same region recalled, "There were stories about Angel 9 for months after D13. Someone who could move through enemy territory like a ghost, treat wounds like a surgeon, and disappear without a trace. We thought it was just legend, but now seeing her here, it all makes sense." Lieutenant Colonel Gregor, Tier 1 Special Forces commander, personally came to Fort Bennet Medical Facility. He saw Mira, then stood motionless. "I commanded a D13. The person who brought us out wouldn't give her name, but I will never forget those hands." Gregor officially confirmed Mira was Angel 9, who had saved 11 lives in the middle of combat without any support. When asked why she never claimed credit, Mira answered, "Because someone didn't survive, for me to bring them home. I carry that debt." The story spread throughout the base. Soldiers coming for checkups began looking at Mira with different eyes. No longer the paper girl, but the person who made it possible for them to have tomorrow. A Special Forces operator whispered, "I thought Angel 9 was a rumor. Turns out she's real, and still silently saving people right among us." Gregor offered medals, record restoration, invited Mira to return as chief instructor for combat emergency classes. Mira declined the position, but agreed to pass on what was necessary. In her first class, she only said, "I don't teach how to save people. I just recount every mistake I made, so you won't repeat them." The revelation of Mira's true identity sent shockwaves through the military medical community that extended far beyond Fort Bennet. Angel 9 had become something of a legend in special operations circles, a mythical figure who represented the ideal of selfless service under impossible circumstances. Lieutenant Colonel Gregor's confirmation carried weight that couldn't be dismissed. As the commanding officer who had been present during the D13 operation, his testimony was definitive. More importantly, his respect for Mira was absolute. "I've served with Medal of Honor recipients," Gregor told the assembled medical staff. "I've worked with people whose courage is legendary. But what Mira did that day, what Angel 9 accomplished, was beyond courage. It was a combination of skill, determination, and selflessness that I've never seen before or since. The details of the D13 operation, previously classified, began to emerge through official channels. What had been reported as a failed extraction with presumed total casualties was revealed to be something much more complex. 11 special operations personnel had indeed been trapped behind enemy lines after their primary mission went wrong. Standard extraction protocols had failed, and command had made the difficult decision to write off the operation rather than risk additional personnel in what appeared to be an impossible rescue. But Mira, operating as the team's designated medic, had refused to accept that assessment. She told us she was going to get us out, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez recalled during his recovery. We thought she was in shock, maybe delusional from the stress. 11 people, 6 kilometers of hostile territory, no support, no extraction plan. It should have been impossible. But Mira had approached the situation with methodical precision that suggested extensive planning and experience that went beyond standard combat medic training. She had studied enemy patrol patterns during the 18-hour siege, identified gaps in their coverage, and calculated routes that would minimize exposure while allowing for the medical support that wounded team members required. She moved us one by one, Rodriguez continued. Never more than 2 at a time, always with someone who could walk, supporting someone who couldn't. She had medication, improvised stretchers, even food and water that she had somehow acquired. The technical aspects of what Mira had accomplished were as impressive as the courage it required. She had performed field surgery under combat conditions, managed complex medical situations without proper equipment, and maintained the physical strength necessary to help carry wounded personnel across difficult terrain. The medical care alone should have been impossible, admitted Dr. Harrison, after reviewing Rodriguez's account. She treated gunshot wounds, managed shock, prevented infection, and maintained patient stability during a 6-hour movement through hostile territory. That level of care requires equipment and conditions we don't have here in a fully equipped facility. But perhaps most remarkably, Mira had accomplished all of this while maintaining operational security that prevented enemy forces from detecting the movement of 11 people across their controlled territory. She knew exactly where they were, Rodriguez explained. Every patrol, every checkpoint, every guard position. It was like she had been studying them for weeks instead of hours. When the extraction was complete and all 11 personnel had been safely evacuated, Mira had simply disappeared. No debriefing, no medical examination, no official recognition. She had walked away from the extraction point and vanished from military records. We tried to find her, Gregor admitted. We wanted to recommend her for every honor the military could bestow, but it was like she had never existed. No records, no forwarding address, no trace in any system we could access. The psychological evaluation that had led to Mira's disappearance from official records became clearer when she finally explained her actions to the medical staff at Fort Bennett. "I lost someone that day," she said quietly, during her first informal teaching session. "Not during the extraction, during the original mission. Someone I was supposed to keep alive. Someone who trusted me to bring them home." The weight of survivor's guilt had driven Mira away from official recognition, but it hadn't driven her away from service. Instead, she had found ways to continue helping others while remaining invisible, contributing her skills without seeking acknowledgement. Working at check-in let me stay close to medical care without having to face the responsibility of being someone's primary medic again, she explained. I could help, but from a distance. I could use what I knew without risking failing someone again. But the Bravo 7 explosion had forced her out of that safe distance, confronting her with the reality that her skills were too valuable to keep hidden, and that sometimes helping others required accepting the risk of responsibility. Students in her first class were stunned when Mira demonstrated advanced trauma care using improvised materials, techniques she had developed during the D13 extraction and refined through years of continued study. An officer asked, "Weren't you afraid when you were left behind?" Mira replied, "I was terrified, but I was more afraid that no one would bring the wounded home." The simple honesty of her response revealed the core of what had made Angel 9 legendary, not fearlessness, but the courage to act despite fear. When others needed help, comment, "Angel 9 is real." If you believe there are heroes who don't need titles, they just need to be trusted when it matters most. After the first class, Fort Bennett opened a program, Angel 9 Protocol, teaching medics how to stay calm, choose escape routes in chaos, make decisions without waiting for orders. Mira didn't stand at a podium. She just walked around the room, adjusting small techniques, how to tie tourniquets, how to place hands on a patient's chest so they trust you're in control. Senior medic Carla said she teaches with her hands, not with words. A young soldier wrote in his diary, "I used to shake when holding a syringe, but Mira looked at me and said, 'If you can save one person, you can save the whole team.' I believed her because she had already done it." A small photo of Mira, no uniform, no name tag, was hung at the medical station. She once sat here and saved more than lives. She saved faith. The program was expanded region-wide. Many bases began searching for other angels not yet named. The transformation at Fort Bennett was immediate and comprehensive. The Angel 9 protocol became more than just a training program. It became a philosophy that influenced how medical personnel approached their work. Traditional medical training focuses on procedures and protocols, explained Dr. Harrison during a presentation to visiting military medical officers. But Angel 9 protocol teaches decision-making under extreme uncertainty, resource improvisation, and psychological resilience when standard support systems fail. The training emphasized skills that couldn't be learned from textbooks: reading environmental cues to anticipate danger, managing multiple critical patients simultaneously with limited resources, and maintaining effectiveness when isolated from command structure. Mira's teaching style was unlike anything the military medical system had ever seen. She didn't lecture about theory or demonstrate techniques on mannequins. Instead, she created scenarios that forced students to adapt, improvise, and make life or death decisions based on incomplete information. She puts us in situations where everything goes wrong, reported Courtney Martinez after completing the program. Equipment fails, communications are down, you're separated from your team, and you have to keep people alive anyway. It's terrifying, but it's also exactly what real combat medicine is like. The psychological aspects of Angel 9 protocol were equally revolutionary. Mira taught students to manage fear, guilt, and the pressure of responsibility that came with holding lives in their hands. She talks about carrying debt, explained one student, about how losing someone never goes away, but you can choose to let that loss make you better at saving the next person. The program attracted attention from special operations units throughout the military. Commanders who had heard the legend of Angel 9 sent their medics to Fort Bennett to learn from the source. What she teaches can't be found in any manual, observed Colonel Stevens after visiting the training facility. She's teaching combat medics to think like special operations personnel, to function independently, adapt to impossible circumstances, and accomplish missions that exceed their supposed capabilities. But perhaps the most significant change was cultural. The Angel 9 protocol challenged traditional military hierarchies by demonstrating that critical knowledge could exist at any level of the organization. Mira taught us to recognize expertise wherever it appears, noted senior medic Carla. Someone's official title might not reflect their actual capabilities. The person who seems to be just administrative support might be the most qualified person in the room. The empty chair that remained in every Angel 9 protocol classroom became a symbol of this philosophy. It represented all the unrecognized experts, the hidden heroes, the people whose contributions were essential but invisible. Angel 9 sat here for those who choose action before permission, read the inscription beneath the chair. The message was clear. Heroism didn't require authorization, and the most important service often happened without official recognition. Comment. The Angel Protocol works if you believe the most important lessons come from those who learned them the hardest way. After 18 months, Mira requested leave from Fort Bennett to return to civilian service. No farewell party, but the next morning every medical equipment cabinet had a note. When no one believes you, remember, survivors will. From that day forward, every time a new soldier joined, they heard a story. There was someone who was once just checking staff, but when everything collapsed, she didn't need to be called by name, just needed to hear the last breath to make it continue. The classroom at Fort Bennett still keeps an empty chair. Under the chair is the inscription, Angel 9. Sat here for those who choose action before permission. The final news about Mira. She was opening a border region medical training center for children, mothers, and refugees, people no one came to save. Someone asked, "Are you a doctor?" Mira smiled. "I used to just do check-in, but I know how to keep someone alive long enough to be truly healed." The impact of Mira's work extended far beyond military medicine. The Angel 9 protocol was adapted for civilian emergency response, disaster relief, and humanitarian aid operations around the world. The principles she developed apply to any situation where people need help but official support systems have failed, explained Dr. Sarah Chen, who documented the protocol for international medical organizations. Emergency rooms in civilian hospitals began implementing Angel 9 techniques for mass casualty events. Paramedics learned improvisation skills that helped them function when equipment failed or backup was unavailable. She taught us that medical care isn't about having perfect conditions, said paramedic instructor James Wilson. It's about using whatever you have to give people the best chance possible. The medical training center that Mira established in the border region became a model for community-based healthcare education. Local residents learned basic trauma care, emergency response, and medical improvisation skills that proved crucial in an area where professional medical help was often hours away. "She doesn't just teach medical techniques," observed Maria Santos, one of Mira's first civilian students. "She teaches us to see ourselves as capable of helping others, even when we don't think we have the training or authority." The center's motto reflected Mira's philosophy. Every person can learn to save a life. Every life saved makes the community stronger. Years later, when military medical personnel were asked about the most important lessons of their training, many would mention Angel 9 protocol, not for its technical content, but for its fundamental message about service and sacrifice. She showed us that being a medic isn't about following procedures, reflected Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, fully recovered and serving as a medical instructor himself. It's about being willing to act when someone needs help, regardless of whether you're supposed to, whether you're qualified, or whether anyone will ever know what you did. The legend of Angel 9 continued to inspire new generations of military and civilian medical personnel. But her real legacy lived in the thousands of people who had learned to see themselves as capable of extraordinary service when circumstances demanded it. If you believe in stories that touch the heart like this one, leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe to Iron Heart Stories. We tell the stories that shouldn't be forgotten.